Hey everyone, welcome back to the Frugal Sportsman and the workshop. Today we're going to be putting together the drawers for our Sportsman work center and storage cabinets. So stick around, we'll be right back. So before we get started on the drawer build, let's take a look at our modules and what we have so far. We have two taller modules and one shorter one. And as you can see, the drawers are going to go right there in the bottom of the two on the right. So let me show you how to take the measurements and then we'll go to building the drawers. Now if you remember, we made these dados in here 5/8 of an inch high, and we spaced them so that the drawer fronts would just be flush with the top, and there'd be about an 1/8 inch space between the next one, and so forth, so on. Now the very first thing we need to do is the 1/2 inch plywood base is going to actually slide in here and be the runners. So what we need to do is take the first measurement, which is really critical, and that is the inside of these cabinets. So we're going to slip the tape inside the dado, just like that, and then we're going to measure this exactly. And here I have 23 3/8. So what we're going to do is take a 1/16 off, and that'll be 23 5/16. And that's going to be our cabinet. We want about a 1/16 inch play, so it's tight enough where it doesn't go wobble all around, but it's loose enough where it'll slide in and out appropriately. Make sure too that you check each cabinet. Okay, these cabinets happen to be off just slightly, and so this one on this side is going to be slightly narrower than the plywood bases I cut on this side. Make sure too that you check it all the way down and cut to the smallest size. So in other words, if this one is 23 5/16, but I find out that 23 5/16 is going to be rubbing there, I'll make it 25 or 23 1/4, and then we'll call it good. So let's jump over to the workstation, and I'm going to rip the plywood and show you how to lay that out. Now this plywood here, you don't want to have ripped at Home Depot. This is actually good both sides, and it's decent plywood. You want that because you want it to have as many cores as possible. That's the layers in here. And you also want it to be as stable as possible. So you don't want to buy cheap plywood for your drawers because they will twist and warp. So buy the decent plywood that you can afford. Then what I've done is I've measured over in 4 spots. The one cabinet we need is 23 1/8 on one side, the other one's 23 5/16. I've laid out the 23 1/8, and I put a mark here, and then center's about here. I come back about 3 inches, put another mark, 3 inches on the other mark, and all the way down the end as well. And then I took a straight edge and did half and half, and then I eyed it to make sure it was straight. Now we're going to rip this down, and then what we're going to do is that we're going to divide each one of these into 5 sections, because each cabinet has 5 drawers. Alright, and so what I've done is I've taken and done the math, and we have 96 inches total. We're going to divide that by 5, and it's going to leave us roughly about 19 inches. We'll probably make the cabinets 18 so we have plenty left over. So I will give you the exact dimensions when we're done down in the description below, so please check that out. But let me rip these 2 pieces and then cut them to the size, and I will let you know what that is as soon as I'm done. Okay, now that I've got both of these drawer bottoms ripped to the exact dimension that we need, this is, remember, the side to side of the cabinet, and each one is a little different, so they're ripped separately. The other one is down here on the floor. Now what we're going to do is I figured this out, that we're going to cut these to 19 inches each, and that will give us 5 drawer bases with just a smidge left over. And so what we're going to do is then, you need to remember when you lay this out, that you lay out from the factory end, measure over here, put a line, measure over here, put a line, connect the lines, cut it leaving the line. You're going to cut on this side. Of course we measured from that side. Just going to cut that line, and then we're going to use this piece then for our template, and we'll just move it down, put a line, move it down, put a line. Don't lay them all out at once, because then when you cut them, they will be different lengths, and you want them as close as possible. So this isn't that critical because it's really just the depth of the drawer, and it can be off quite a bit. It's not going to matter. We just got to make sure that it's less than the depth of the cabinet, and this is. So we're good to go there. So let me cut these, and then I'll lay the next one up, and we'll cut those, and we'll have all our bases. Then I'm going to show you how to assemble the sides and the fronts. So now that I've marked this piece at 19 inches, we'll cut it off. Now, with this piece cut, we'll use it as a template to cut the rest of our pieces. This side was the factory edge, so what I'm going to do is flip it over and use that factory edge to get the straightest line. Just line up these edges here. Line up the sides more especially. Mark our line. Make the next cut. The other thing you want to do is make sure you mark what cabinet this is going to. So I'm just going to put a little C here for center cabinet. That way I don't mix up the drawers. Now, before I make the second cut, what I want to do is test fit this over in the cabinet. After I cut the widths this way, the depth of the drawer at 19 inches, I test fit the pieces and found out they were a little tight. So I trimmed off just a little bit more on each side. So your overall inside dado edge to dado edge is going to be about 1/8 of an inch instead of a 1/16. Now they slide real nice. Some of these, and so when we put them together, we shouldn't have any problem if they swell a little bit in the summer or contract in the winter. And so if you have it that way, where you like the drawers, how they fit, like that, nice and snug, there's still lots of room to play in and out, then what you want to do is begin to mark them. And so what I'm going to do is, this is a center cabinet, this is the right cabinet, so I'm going to put R1, R2, R3, 4, 5, and then C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. That way I'm not going to mess up the drawers, and they will fit as they were intended. So now with that, we're going to cut the side pieces and the front pieces, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you get your dimensions for your drawer sides and the back, and that's what we're going to cut now. So for the drawer size, we're going to need 20 pieces because we have 10 drawers, one on each side, and the back will need 10 pieces. And then we'll cut the cabinet faces. They'll be a standard 24 inches minus 1/16 for a gap in the middle here. So but let me show you how to cut the side pieces here. Basically, you're going to measure the width of your drawer here, and this happens to be 23 1/4. All right, so what we're going to do is subtract 3 inches from that. 3 inches will give us our back piece. The back piece is going to fit inside, not in the back, but inside the side pieces. Okay, so we're going to utilize our back piece. That will be 23 1/4 minus 3. Okay, so that brings us to 20 1/4. So that will be our back piece. Our side pieces will be the length of our drawers, which are 19. So we need 20 pieces at 19, and we need 10 pieces at 20 1/4. So let me show you how to cut them on the miter saw with a stop so that they remain accurate. Now our drawer sides are going to be 3.5 inches high for all our drawers, and then the faces will vary in height so we can fit taller things in the bottom drawers. So what we're going to do is we I have this miter saw set at 0. Now if you don't have a miter saw, that's fine. You can do everything with the circular saw like we did before. Cut your first piece and then just use that as a template to mark the others. But because I have the miter saw, I'm going to utilize it and make things go a lot faster. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to check our first end for square. And that looks good. Then I'm going to put a mark on here for 20 1/4. Now it's going to be our back pieces, and we're going to cut 10 of these, okay? So I'm going to cut one, and then I'm going to set up a stop block down here. I'm going to draw a line and put it on the mark where we need to cut on this side of the line. Right there. Now I'm going to put a mark on the table. And now I'm going to cut this piece. $20 1/4, right on the money. Now what I'm going to do is take this piece, place it right against that line, so just covering that line. And then I'm going to clamp it in place. Then when I bring the next board, I just need to touch it and I can cut them without measuring. Now one thing I wanted to show you, and that is if you don't have a miter saw and you don't use a stop block, you can still get pretty accurate cuts. All you have to do is measure one out, cut it, and then you'll have your template. And then you just need to lay it against and mark. Then all you have to do is line the saw up against the straight edge, move it back or forward until you get to your mark. And then when you run your guide along the edge here, you'll have a nice straight cut. So that's how you can do it without the miter saw. But now I need to cut 20 of these at 19 inches. Always double check your cuts when you're done. Right on the money. $18 more to go. Okay, now that we've got all our pieces cut, we're going to be taking our side pieces and we're going to be putting a pocket hole on one side. Just like that. We're going to be doing all 20 pieces just one side. So let's get them done right now. Okay, with all our sides done, now we're going to do our backs. Now the backs are going to have 2 pocket holes on each end. And let's get started doing those. Now remember, if you don't have a pocket jig like this one, which is made more for production, you can just use the one that I showed you, the mini pocket jig, and just take your time and clamp it up each time. Okay, that's what that should look like. What I've done now is on the plywood where the drawer front is going to be attached, I put in 5 pocket screws right along there. I've done that to all these and those over there. So once those are all done on all 10 drawers, then we can start the assembly. Make sure that if you're using the pocket jig, make sure that you change the collar dimension on your drill to fit 1/2 inch, or these holes would be too deep, and that will not be good. So make sure you change the depth for your drill before you start putting in, because this is 1/2 inch and not 3/4 anymore. Okay, now we get started on assembly. Assembly is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to be taking a back and 2 sides. This front piece goes on the inside of the drawer, so when you open them up, you won't see the fasteners. And the back is going to be like this. So when we put these screws in this way, they'll be hidden from the back. And all you'll see from the side is a nice smooth board. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll jump and put the other one on, and then these will be ready. We'll set them aside, and I'll show you how to fasten them to the plywood bases. Okay, I want to show you how easy these go together. Basically, you just take the side piece, lay it on a flat table, put the pocket screws for the front drawer inside and these on the back side. Then I use a table to keep everything level, and I just offset it, keep it flush. Run one screw in there, and another one in the bottom. And that's that. And then I just take it and flip it end for end like that. Do the other side. There you go. All done. So with these done, our next step is to cut our drawer face frames. And we'll do that on the miter saw like we did the sides. I'll put a stop block in, and we'll cut them at just less than 24 inches, 23 and 15/16. That'll give us some clearance. In order to cut the faces of the drawers, I set up a stop block, and I'm cutting these at 23 and 15/16. Okay, in order to fasten the drawers, what I've done is taken a drawer front, found the middle of that, and then found the middle of this. I put a mark on top here, and then I put a mark there and transfer it to the side. And I'll show you why I'm doing that in a second. Now, I'll just push this back, lift this drawer front up, place it on top, and line up the 2 marks. Once they're lined up, I just take a screw and run it in from the bottom. There we go. Now I can fasten screws all along, keeping the bottom even as best you can. Now I take a face like this, see, and lay that on there, fasten it into the side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a scrap piece like this, and I'm going to place it right here so that I know I'm even where I want to be. Then I can place a little mark and run my screws in. Go. Do this side. Okay, that's what a drawer front looks like. The drawer looks like. Now all I have to do is just put that spacer here when I flip it over, and I'll put some nails in from the bottom along here and along the back, and that'll be super strong. Let me show you how it fits. Now these edges here are going to run into our dados in the bottom of the cabinet. All we have to do is line them up like so, and there it is. I'll let you take a look on the side here. You can see how they go together. So here's the runners, and that just slides in the groove. And that's how they look. Sorry for the light, it's getting a little dark and I didn't set the other lights up. But now I'm going to finish these by showing you how to make the handles. They're really super simple, and we'll get them mounted, and that'll be our poles. And this part of our video will be complete. So let's jump over to the other side of the shop and work on the handles. What I've done here is taken a scrap piece of wood to make the handles from. First I've set the table saw at 15 degrees bevel, and then I made sure that before I did that I placed the fence of the table saw away from the bevel so that the bevel is moving away from the fence. If you place it the other way, the piece can bind in there and cause kickback, and it's not safe. The best way to do it is make sure that the bevel is away from the fence so that the piece that you're cutting just falls away. Then what I've done is I've taken the piece and run it through one way and then turned it and run it through another. So the finished piece on the face is about 1 3/4 inches. After ripping the boards and beveling both sides, what I've done then is gone over to the miter saw and I set up a stop block system again to avoid measuring, and then cut the pieces at 6 inches. Now I have a handle that's ready to be drilled out from the back to accept the screws and be mounted to the faces of all the cabinet drawers. After sanding the boards to give it a nice finished look, I then measure in 1.5 inches from the end of each handle. I find the center of the back as well, and then I place an X where I'm going to drill the holes to accept the screws from the back. You got to make sure that when you drill the holes, you do not go all the way through to the face. Make sure you only drill about halfway through. This will start the screws and allow the threads to grab, but not show from the face. Now you have to select 2 drill bits, a larger one and a slightly smaller one. The smaller one should be about the same diameter as the shank of the screw, and when you hold it up alongside the screw, it should cover the shank or the main part of the screw, but you'll still see the threads sticking on either side of the drill bit. That's about the right size bit that you're going to want to use. That bit is going to be used to drill the holes in the back of the handle. But remember, you only want to go about 1/2 or 3/4 of the way through the handle. The next bit, the larger one, would be the size of from outside thread to outside thread of the screw. And that's the one you're going to use to drill into the faces of all the drawers. You want that hole bigger because you want the screw to be able to slide freely in that hole, so when you tighten the handle, it will pull the face of the drawer and the handle together tightly. Once you've selected the 2 drill bits, you start off by drilling into the back of the handle with the smaller one and only going about 3/4 through. Then what you're going to do is you're going to lay out the drawer face. Come in from each side and mark the center. Now if you've laid out 1.5 inches from each side of the 6-inch handle. That should leave you 3 inches in between. From that center mark on the drawer face, go 1.5 inches to your left and 1.5 inches to the right. Then measure up from the bottom to the center. Mark that on each of those, and those will create your X to drill your holes for your larger hole. Drill from the face on down through, and you'll be ready to mount the handles. Once those holes are drilled out, is just to push those screws up from the bottom, like that. Place the hole and just get each one started. There we go. And that's what the finished product looks like. Okay, here's our drawers. Nice and smooth. All done. One thing to remember is that when you take them out, what I did is took each drawer out individually and then put it back in the same spot before I took the other one out, before I put that handle on. That way I don't mix them up. And the other thing I did was on the bottom, I wrote the location for the drawer so that when I move them to the final location for install, I'll know what slot they go in. For instance, this one here is C2. C means center cabinet. And as you can see, they're very easy to take out and put back in. So guys, thanks for joining me today, again, here at the Frugal Sportsman. And now I'm going to take you to our next phase, which is going to be the desk build, which is really easy. And so if you like our content, I really encourage you to share it with a friend if it can help them as well. And make sure you subscribe to our channel. It really helps us to put more videos out and allow them to be seen. Anytime you comment or subscribe or hit the notification bell, it allows our videos to be seen more by others. So if you think our content's worth it, please do that for us. We'd really appreciate it. Until next time, God bless. We'll see you soon.